How about now? Hello, hello. This is great turnout. Apparently this is the largest that the Auckland Rust Meetup has been. I'm not going to think that that's about my talk, but you know, I can maybe think that in the back of my mind to give me some confidence. This is about a project that I've been working on with a few friends of mine on this site. It's called Nushell. And so I'm Jonathan Turner. I worked on the Rust team at Mozilla for a few years and then went to work at Microsoft. But in my spare time, I still love writing Rust. So this is kind of one of the ongoing series of projects continuing to use my Rust skills. This is in work that's done with Yehuda Katz, who's a good friend of mine. You may recognize the name if you've done some Ruby on Rails kinds of stuff. He was also on the Rust core team, and Andres Robolino. All right, so what is Nushell? Why are we talking about it? So in a Nushell. All right, so this is a kind of shell like Bash or PowerShell, that kind of thing. It is different in that it's structured. We'll see what that means, but basically in the Unix philosophy way of things from like the 70s, that you can connect together commands on your terminal, and those commands flow from standard in and standard out this text back and forth between your applications. And you don't need really complex commands if you can stitch them together and create complexity from nice composition. So we really want to leverage that in kind of, if you will, a modern way of thinking about the shell. This is multi-platform. It is 2019. We should definitely be multi-platform. And it's a shell. Okay. Why? Okay. Why? So we have Bash and Z Shell and Corn Shell, and I bet everyone in this room probably might even have their own shell that they run, that they've configured to exactly their specifications. But generally, those shells, like we were saying earlier, are text flowing between standard in and standard out. One of the only shells that has done that in the last, that kind of deviated from that in the last 15 years or so was PowerShell. Out of curiosity, how many people use PowerShell or have used PowerShell? So actually about a quarter. That's pretty cool. So PowerShell had this idea, well, what if we don't do just text? What if we do objects between these commands? So an object can flow through the pipeline, you can invoke methods on it, you can mutate it, you can do object-y things on it. And the abilities that you have in PowerShell become really apparent as you stitch together, okay, let's do PS and then pipe it through and then find the app I want and then .kill that. So I mean, it's amazing what you can do. All right, so that's PowerShell, but that's a bit object-oriented. What if we took the ideas from streams of text with standard in, standard out, mixed it with this structured thing from PowerShell, and put our Rust caps on? So actually, because we're doing a Rust tutorial later today, how many people have never used Rust before? Wow, okay, cool, more than half. So let me do a quick, maybe tee up your talk just a little bit. So in a Rust way of thinking, Rust is not object-oriented in a traditional sense. It has methods, but your data and your functions are separate. So if you're used to C++, you have a struct, but then you have functions that work on that. So this idea that we can take structure and take verbs or functionality, separate them, and make them, instead of, if you will, n times m, like m methods on n types of data, we can do n plus m. So for n data types, we have m verbs. We'll see what that means here in a second. But just give you a sense that we can take another way of approaching the complexity of composition using some of the techniques that Rust and other languages do. Okay, that was a bit of a mouthful. Does anyone have questions before I go any further? Okay, cool. Everyone's got it. Great. Okay, demo number one. This might be a little tricky holding the microphone.
Do you want me to help?
I really don't want you to have to like slave over the microphone for me, but I have to type, and typing with one hand is kind of hard.
I can hold the microphone.
Yeah, appreciate it. This is not awkward at all. All right, first check. Can anyone see that in back? Everyone see it? Great.
Yeah.
Let me center it just a little bit better. All right, so when you drop in a Nushell, we're using Nushell right now. If I type ls, you can kind of see it scrolled off the top. All right, so what comes back isn't just a bit of text about the files in your terminal or in your directory. It's actually a structured table. So we've got columns across the top and rows down the side. So what does that let us do? So I can take that ls and start to work with that data with some verbs. So we'll do like a sort by the name. And what comes out is that table sorted by the name. Or I can say where, and then like type equals directory, right? And I can get just the directories. So I'm working with just the table and just a couple of extra verbs. Let's do just like one more just for kicks. Let's say like size is greater than 10 kilobytes, right? Again, same idea. So why is this interesting? It seems kind of, that's neat. You have a table for your ls. Great, good job. But the idea is that we can take other commands that are producing this kind of data and pull them in as well. So let's take our PS. So these are our processes that are all running. And we can say, well, we'll use the same kinds of commands over our process list. So we've got PS, we can say where CPU is greater than 0, right? So these are our processes that are taking some non-trivial amount of time, obviously you. And of course, new, while it's calculating that, it's kind of jumped up in the list. Yes, first question.
Yeah, sorry. It's like the ls and ps commands are sort of like separate to Rust itself, or you implemented those in Rust?
Yeah. So if
the Nushell, sorry, Nushell.
Yeah, no worries. So ls, ps, these are commands that are more customary in like a Linux, Unix environment, but maybe less customary in a Windows environment. So these are kind of writing on the muscle memory of people that are used to those commands. Yeah, it's a bit of a pun, sorry, but it's in the future you'll be able to alias this to something that you're more familiar with. So like dir from DOS, you could just kind of say, oh, if I type dir, I want to see that table.
You pushing what I'm kind of getting at is that you're pushing what you're doing in Nushell here, is that getting pushed to the PS command or the ls command that's running underneath? Or?
No, that's a great question. So we're actually hitting the system calls that an ls or a PS would hit. Yeah. Just to kind of reiterate, so this is multi-platform. So we do that across any platform. We'll also reach out to whatever Windows, however it wants to enumerate its directories or its processes. Right. Use that to get the data directly.
So you're re-implementing things like ls and ps.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Cool.
Yeah. That's a good thing to point out. So why would you re-implement something that already works? And here's the sense of, okay, if I said, how do I ls things over 10 kilobytes? How do I ls only directories? Or, like, we have to remember all the command line arguments for all of these commands. And what used to be a really simple idea a few decades ago of stitching these things together has now kind of unfortunately grown to be quite a panoply of options and attributes. So this kind of tries to reclaim some of that simplicity of saying, well, maybe all it needs to do is give us a directory listing, and then we can use a different set of things over that. Yeah, that's a great question. Any other questions? Yes.
How do you do the auto completions, like auto suggestions?
Magic.
It was magic.
So this project, as I mentioned, was the work of around 3 people. It's now grown to a few dozen people that have joined us since our public release a week ago. We heavily leverage one of the secret powers of Rust that I hope we talk about a little bit tonight, but probably in future months, which is the crate ecosystem. So crate is a reusable library in code, and there is a website just like Debian packages or npm packages, those kind of things.
Not too much information.
Oh,
Yeah.
sorry.
It will come.
It will come. But we heavily leverage this capability to be able to build what we've built. So there's an auto-completion crate, and we just use it, and it kind of works, you know? So yeah, that's why you see that popping up. Any other last questions? Yes?
Now this is the last CLI or what? Where is the CLI of the last?
CLI, oh, sorry, yes. I meant to warn you that I'm a bit embedded with this thinking, so please stop me if I use terminology that's unfamiliar. CLI means command line interface. Yeah. Oh, sorry.
This is a CLI or what is this? This is a project that's embedded in the Rust or what?
Yeah, so this would replace, like you could use this instead of Bash. Use this in Windows. You could just kind of run
yes,
this.
And this one is packaged with Rust, or is it a different thing?
Yeah, you can download it from the crates website if you want to. Was that your question?
Yes.
Yeah. There's other distributions now. Other people have made like a chocolatey and other kinds of distributions like that, which is like the Windows package.
And this project is developed by Rust.
Yeah, it's all written in Rust. Yeah. Anyone else? Okay, I will. Thanks. Okay, so we saw LS. Yes. So watch time. What do we have? 6:45. When did we stop?
I think you're fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have a lot of stuff to show you. We're going to stop. So LS, PS. Let me just show you a couple other things super quick. So we can just get information about your system. Again, it doesn't have a lot of complexity in invoking this command. It just gives you everything. And then you can...
Hang on, why does that say kind of object?
So everything is a table. But what if you have a table inside of a table? So object is just us being cute. But it is a table inside of that table. So let's actually jump inside of that cell. So for example, I could go into host, and we can see information. So we're looking inside of the first cell under host, and that's expanded underneath there. So this ability to kind of structure our data and then kind of work through it, again, kind of just showing that off.
So Jonathan, what's the difference between items and object?
Is there a difference between, sorry?
Items and object?
Items and objects.
It says 3 items.
Yes. So that 3 items means it's an array. So it might be like 3 rows. Yeah, so if let me just grab that one. Yeah, so it's 3 rows. Each of them is a row of data. Yep. Now let me show you one more thing, and then we'll jump back into the presentation. So I've shown getting data, but there's files all over our systems that have inherent structure inside of them. So if we look at our source code, often if we're using npm or whatnot, in Rust, there's some equivalent called a toml file. So there's like toml, JSON, etc. So I can open that cargo toml file. And so this is the structure of the file. Now, if I show you just the file itself, we can kind of look around and it's text. But it has inherent structure in it, and we can use that to our advantage. Again, the same thing. I can do where, I can do sort by, I can do all the functions over a table, but now over that structure. Okay. Any other questions? Great. Let me jump back. Thank you.
Go.
All right. I know it's a bit of a wall of text, but let me just touch on some of the goals for why we started thinking in this direction. So Yehuda, again, I mentioned earlier, is one of the people that worked on this, pointed out, hey, PowerShell has all this capability. Wouldn't it be fun if we made a fun version, a Rusty version? So fun sounds like an odd technical design point, but it turns out when you're doing stuff for fun on the side, you kind of want it to stay fun for you too. But there's this other piece to it, which is if casual users are using it and enjoying it, as they become more advanced, the advanced user still enjoys doing the kind of everyday tasks. It feels good. It feels ergonomic. And this little, again, it seems like a subtle point to make about design, but optimizing for fun means that we can throw out trying to be too fancy, trying to optimize for an advanced case that only maybe a couple people will hit. So we end up serving a lot more people. I didn't show error messages, but maybe I'll have a second to show them in a minute. But yeah, we have good error messages because it's important. You know, if you get hit with a wall of red text, not to point out any shells for people that know this one, that's not very fun. It would be nice to know exactly where the error is and how to fix it. And if you use Rust, you get really accustomed to the fact that it likes to underline exactly where it thinks the error is and then suggest how to fix it. All right, so let me just kind of scoot ahead and talk a little bit about how this works. So the pipelines that we were seeing, where we have pipes between these commands, you can kind of think of the left side as producing this data. So we had ls and ps and sys and opening a file and getting its structure out. These are producing a standard value type that everything in new understands. From there, it goes through a filter, and that filter can do whatever it wants to the table. It can be adding rows, it can be removing them, it can be changing values in the cell, but think of it in an immutable way. So it's going to produce a new table. Each step of filter produces a new table. And then at the very end, we have a viewer. So everything that I showed so far is always going to just show you the table. So we have this thing called auto view, and generally you never type it because it's just assumed. But sometimes you want to view it as a tree, as other structures, and you can do that too. Let me touch on this. So I said this is a structured shell, so what kind of structure? When you, in 20 or so minutes, take the tutorial, these will seem familiar. So the data types that Rust has look very similar to this, though there's a couple of differences with file size and fancy decimals. But by and large, the standard types that you'd be used to for like JavaScript types of languages, we have them in new as part of how we describe data in the system. We also have tables and lists. We can work with binary data and blocks as well. Blocks being blocks of code. Okay, I did want to touch on this. It sounds really cool. You're in your own little world there, buddy. You've got commands and they output structure, and that's great. What about everything else? You know, if you look at the world and zoom really far in, you might see the new commands in there, but there's a whole world of basically just like everyone else and their every command. You know, what if I wanted to run the ls that's on my system? What if I wanted to work with echo or git or any number of other external commands? So new will work with them. And oh yeah, I need to show you another demo. Sorry. I'll try to run through this one because I don't want to cut into your tutorial time. I think it's pretty cool. Okay, so one of the first things that we can do reaching into the outside world is to go out to the internet and grab something from the internet. So if I open, let's just, I'm going to try to remember this URL off the top of my head, Turner.org, XML, see if I guessed correctly. Yes. So I've reached out, grabbed the URL, it's XML. And it automatically recognizes, because when you go grab something from HTTP, it says, oh, by the way, this is an XML type. And so we can pull that in, parse it, and then show that to you in a structured way. So if I wanted to take that, this XML is really gross, so you can go in a little bit, but you can see I can jump in and then get to the next level and then to the next level and so on. We have post, but for sake of time, I'll just trust me that post works very similarly. We can post to HTTP and get some data back. All right. Yeah, let's try this live. Okay. So merged. Does anyone remember?
There's your error message.
Yeah, there's an error message. It has no idea. I typed GET instead of GIT. Okay. Let's try this again. Merged. Okay, cool. So now I'm calling out to the git command. Let's turn this into something that we can use. So we'll turn this into the lines. So now we have a table of just the lines that came back to us.
So this is wrapping around an external command, external to Nushell. Okay.
That's right. So it's taking that text, because everything is working in text between standard in and standard out, we can just take that standard out from the git command, turn that text into something that's more structured. And we do it in the same kind of flow that we work with tables. So we have the line, we can use where just as before. So we'll use a new little trick here. It means as it flows through the value that we're looking at. So if this value in that row is equal to, we'll say not equal to master. All right, so these are the unmerged Git branches that are not master, not the one I'm looking at. So then we can go one step further. We can say get the branch off the top of my head. Right? So does anyone dare me to hit the key? So in theory, this should delete all the merged branches from my Git. Boom. Okay, so we can interact with the outside world, both pulling in data and then using the table from the data from the table, and then creating another set of commands for each of those rows. All right, as I mentioned before, this was, yes?
You use XML and the DOMML. You can work with another structured files like JSON, YAML.
Yeah, it can work with, I'll show it in maybe even one slide or two slides. Might have to skip the last one, but yes. There's a set of about 8 or 10 file formats that it already supports, and contributors are adding more like every week. We're getting new files that we support. Yeah. So I mentioned this project, I only have time to show you just a tiny bit of the tip of the iceberg, if you will, about what this thing, what it can do, but also the ambition of the project. But really this was the work of only a few people, and it was made possible because of some of the things that Rust does really well. Hopefully helps whets your appetite a bit for learning about Rust and going through the tutorial and working through it yourself. One of them that Rust came to fame because of its safety guarantees is that it doesn't crash. So the kinds of crashes, quote unquote, that we have to deal with are not handling values in a proper way. If we handle them correctly, no problem. And it's really easy to find out when it happens. You see it once, you'll see it 1,000 times. If you use a technique called unwrapping, you can write code a lot faster, but you have to go back through and fix them later. Okay. So that's the only kind of crash that we hit. I'm not going to wood that I'm not lying, I'm pretty sure. Yes, that is the only type of crash that we had to deal with. And we're using pretty cutting edge stuff. So those pipelines are they're asynchronous, they're running in parallel, all the items are being processed in parallel. It's under the hood, this thing is remarkably fancy, due in large part to Yehuda's work. But all of that is possible because I could just sit on the abstractions that Rust provides without getting into a lot of the nitty-gritty details about how to move memory around or how to deal with threads. I said 3 people, that's a lie. There's actually the amount of code reuse that made this possible is just astronomical. So I list 60 crates. Those 60 crates depend on hundreds of others. So when you built the release version of this, I think it built 400 dependencies, which may sound crazy if you're coming from other languages, but that's totally normal in Rust, especially if you want as many features as this thing has. You know, we deal with file formats, we deal with binary formats, we have all this optimization around asynchrony, etc. It's good to have that support that some other people were working on. So I went and calculated, it's at least 70 people, but probably hundreds of people's work that we actually built this thing using and in coordination with, without them even knowing. Okay, the having fun demo, sorry, I have to skip this one. No, I don't want to cut into your time.
Oh, no, I think we've got time out.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead, yeah. Do
5
people want to
minutes.
see another demo?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
I do. I'm selfish.
Apologies for starting a whole string of questions before.
Yeah, we should have time for questions. Well, I mean, if you have questions, you should feel free to yell them out. Or raise your hand. Yes,
Do you use any unsafe Rust?
I use one line on Safe Rust, and you will see it very soon. Okay, I'm gonna tear into this demo just to show you real quick. Oh yeah, we have metadata. Oh gosh, what's the easiest way to show this off real quick? Yeah, okay. So in the top, it's saying this requires string input, and then somehow it knows where that value originated. This is one of the fun error messages we cooked up. So you'll see that underneath it says value originated from here. So the values flowing through the pipeline have metadata tagged on them. It says where they came from, where the originating span is that's in the command that created them.
This looks very much like Rust.
Yeah, there's I don't want to brag, but the Rust error messages were
Yours.
mine.
Excellent.
Yeah, okay. So that's why.
You're allowed to break.
Yeah. Oh yeah, okay, let's have a little bit more fun. So let's see. Vincent? Why would you do this? Why put a picture printer in a, yeah, right. And yeah, here's our one line. Let me make this slightly smaller so you can see what in the world is going on. Yeah. Yeah, it's a Nintendo emulator in your terminal. Why?
Why?
Why? That's your one line of unsafe. Yeah, that's the only one. And it's completely optional, you do not have to use it. By default, if you install new, no unsafe code. I think I fried their brain with the Nintendo. Okay. I spent entirely too much time on that. Okay, so if you're interested in trying this out, we have put out our first public release, 0.2.0, to just let you know, yeah, don't expect everything to work, don't expect, if it looks like it should work and it doesn't, file a bug, that kind of thing. But there's enough there that you can get a sense for where we're going, I think. And a lot of people jumped on to help. As I mentioned, we started with 3 people, now it's like dozens of contributors and more people jumping on every day, which is amazing. To your question about file formats, I went and looked. It's like JSON, BSON, which is like the binary version of JSON, TOML, YAML, XML, INI, CSV, etc., SQLite. I think I'm missing a few actually. And all of these just, again, load right into that table format. We have a lot of verbs for working with tables, and then we'll kind of revisit that as it matures to see which ones we actually use a lot of, and then stabilize on those. I showed you quickly text viewing. You saw a little bit of the fun that you can do with binary viewing. No, it's not useful. Yes, it's fun, so why not do it? And then we have some basic stuff like file operations and working with LS and CD and whatnot that we saw earlier. Okay, any last questions before I hand it? Yes.
In that example that you showed, the demo that you showed where you did the Git branch, do you have something for processing those external commands to sort of like separate them into a list? So that can be then a table instead of just that
Yeah.
single line.
Yeah,
single
I
line
did
thing?
a terrible job at demoing that, didn't I? Yes. The short answer is yes. You can take the lines coming in and then split them by some characteristic in that line, and then make columns from that. And then you can name those columns if you want.
Or regex thing maybe? It's not just simple
Yeah, though, my friend Yehuda and I, him in particular has a kind of an aversion to regex and wants to do something that's like it, but perhaps a little bit easier to read. It'd be easier to kind of stare at and reason about.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, your table processing pipeline stages, do they all run in the same process as the new shell, as the rest of the shell?
Does the
Like your where clauses and things like that, do they all run in the same process as the shell itself?
That's all handled by the async await, async stream stuff. That's actually a layer lower than even we work at.
It sounds like the answer is yes. But
What's that?
the answer,
I mean, it's threaded, but I don't know
it's
if it's
threaded, but it's so if you ran out of, like if you did tons of processing, you ran out of memory, you could like hang a whole shell.
You probably could. Yeah. For massive amounts of data from a debug server, this thing. Yeah, not to pick on any particular example. Yeah. Yes.
So on the files, you say that you can put it separated, but what about working with some non-files like access logs from Apache and Nginx? So
Yeah.
there are some already something built, so you already say, okay, I have Apache logs.
Yeah, so at least for things as standard as Apache logs, we would have, I didn't even talk about this. You can write a plugin.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
you can make a plugin that says, I convert from Apache logs into table format, register that with new, and then new, when you open a file of that format, we'll just open it straight into the table for you.
So any type, like, I thinking that somebody else already have those Apache logs, but example, I am more like networking, or I have like a syslog input from Cisco or from somewhere other network devices, so I can customize my plugin so I can go and read through that files.
Exactly. Yep.
So that means I can write a regex plugin.
Can do.
Done.
Can do. Yes.
Is there a way to customize the shell?
So there's like yes and no. Because it's like a 0.2 release, there's parts of the customization that you can't do. You can do plugins. You can't change the prompt yet. That's something that we can add. We basically just had to drop it so we could finish some other things. But yes, for sure. Yes.
Does interactive tools like Vim and maybe Blogger work at the moment?
Yes. Yeah, it will do the right thing. So if you go into Vim, you'll just jump straight into Vim, and when you come out, you'll jump straight back. Yep.
Do you use it as your default shell yet?
I do dog food. Yes.
Another one.
Yep.
Can you have more than one filter, like a where with a pipe to another where pipe to you can just keep cascading it through?
Yep.
Okay, cool.
Yep.
Thank you.
So if I was to write my own filter as a plugin, would I have access to the same expression syntax as where does? Is that out of the shell?
Yeah, you will be given a block, and you'll execute that block. Exactly how that works, it is TBD, but it is definitely planned to be done.
Are there functions? Like, if can you write like a shell script, like a new shell script?
Not yet. Again, that's planned. So we've got like the basic pipeline and how the pipeline works, kind of the logic of the pipeline. And then one of the things that we hope to build on top of what we have so far. It's like Christmas all of a sudden.
And there's speed dating shifting
wow.
around there.
Here it goes. But yeah, it's planned that we'll be able to do scripting, to be able to like take something that was an idea, grow it into a pipeline, grow that into a full script. For sure.
So, could I go to, you seem to say that a lot of these things can just go straight out to Zoom 1. So I had like a brand new Linux distribution installed this. Could I basically use it as sort of a nice layer overfetch?
Yeah. Yeah. If you use what is System 76's Pop OS, that's the Linux distro I use, in case anyone's curious. If you set your shell to be this shell, it will use SH and then call into this, giving you the access to the profile, to the path, etc. Which is kind of nice, because we don't have that yet, but it just works. Maybe one last question, and then we'll call it. Anyone else? Yes. Two people. Okay, ask at the same time, and I'll try to answer. Go ahead, Toby.
How does escaping work on the command line? Because that's like the thing I find most painful about shells.
Like escaping in strings.
Pipe characters and links. If you want to, like, if your file name is named with the bar.
Yeah. It should be fair game if you're inside a quote. So if you're inside of a string, you should be able to put it, and that string will be treated as the file name. Then we do not have escaping. We have a different kind of escaping, which is worth mentioning. In case anyone's curious, how do I run the LS that's actually on my system? You can put like a little caret in front of it, and it will call out to the system LS. Oh, in strings. I think that's something that we still need to do. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Jonathan.